Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Tally. This is episode 46, and I'm your host, Brian Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of some of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Be sure to like and share the program as well. You can also support the program by going to Anchor FM or Spotify and clicking the support button. Also, become a program sponsor today. Program sponsorships include a custom written script to advertise your business to its fullest potential to get the results you're looking for. Let me help you market your business. Advertise right here on the program today. To learn more, email me directly at thetallybill@gmail.com. That's thetallybill@gmail.com. Folks, before we get started, I would like to send my heartfelt condolences and prayers to everyone affected by Hurricane Ian. The path of destruction that Hurricane Ian has left behind is truly devastating. Again, our thoughts and prayers are with you today. We have a very special guest joining us on today's program, a selfless servant that continues to be a strong voice and champion in the veteran and military community. Christina Pacheco was the mother of two and a wife to an active duty Marine. Christina and her husband founded the Patel Foundation after their best friend, Sgt Patel, a Marine with 1st Battalion, 23rd Marines, killed himself in early 2021. The Patel Foundation started as a grassroots effort to ensure no Marine was ever alone or left behind. Christina has opened her home to any Marine that needed to talk, needed a hot meal, or just somewhere to be around others. Christina has found a way to break down barriers and create opportunity through community equity and forging relationships to help combat and eliminate the risk factors that contribute to society and the veteran and military community. The Patel Foundation is having their grand opening event this Saturday in Houston, Texas. I will have all the information on the bottom of the screen, and we'll link the grand opening fundraising event in the description of this podcast. With that, we are honored to be joined by Christina Pacheco. How are you?
I'm doing good. Today's sweater weather.
Fall hit literally like overnight. 2 days ago, it seems as if I've been waking up to 95-degree weather for months and months and months, and now it's like 63, and I'm like, wait, man, I'm loving this. I had to go get me my pumpkin spice latte.
I love it. We're gonna have to get to a Patel Foundation hoodie. I walked outside today and I was like, oh, I don't need to put pants on. I had shorts on, to be fair. I didn't go outside pantless, but I was like, oh, it's cool.
I love fall. It's just a great feeling. The leaves, the changing of seasons, new beginnings, great moments of Thanksgiving and family and Christmas, and it is literally my favorite time of the year. I just love fall, and it just really it really just brings that gratitude to my life. It's football, it's baseball playoff season, college football. This is a great time in the year for sure for me. So I want to get started here. We have got so much to talk about, with you and the service that you do every day in the veteran and military community, and the life you have led since the tragic incident of losing your best friend, Sgt Patel. But before we get involved in that, I'd like to learn a little bit about you. Can you tell me where you were born and raised?
So I was born in California, and I was raised all over the United States. Wasn't a military brat, but was a IBM brat. So we moved pretty consistently every 2 to 3 years. To me, I consider California home. Most of my family's still there. Was fortunate enough to go to school here in Houston, have built some really solid roots here. So go Cougs. Majored in international business and love Texas. And I kind of consider myself a Texan now. I've been here for 18 years.
So, coming from California, what part of California would you consider to be home?
The LA area, I was born outside of Sacramento. And we lived all over California, but most of my dad's family lived out in the LA, Burbank, northern LA area.
So right in the San Fernando Valley, right in the middle of the rat race, literally, folks.
Yeah.
So what brought you to Texas?
When I'm trying to think, my dad moved us here. He worked, and we actually lived down in Corpus Christi. And so that is where we met, or my parents met, the Coda family, who our scholarship is named after, Corporal Coda. And so growing up for us, it was always, palm trees and beaches. And I've stayed in Texas pretty much on and off since. I'll get really sick of the weather and I'll move back to California. But when I met my husband, I was actually getting ready to move back to California. I was over the Houston weather, and we met, and I stayed in Houston.
So you're married to an active duty Marine, correct?
Yes, sir.
How did you find an active duty Marine in Houston, Texas?
So the Houston area has a local battalion. It's called the 123, and they're out of Ellington. I have known 123 Marines, the entire time I've lived in Houston, because it is a reserve unit. So even though it's a reserve unit, they have active duty Marines that are staffed there. And my buddies that were in the unit introduced me to my husband. And it's kind of a funny story. It was like a last ditch attempt to get me to date someone. I was just over the dating world. And someone introduced me to TJ, my husband. And he was part of our friend circle that I just wasn't part of. And so when we became friends and we met each other, it was as if I had known him my whole life, like just this, sinking into a friendship. He was also best friends with Patel. And I kind of bounce back and forth between calling him Patel and Patel. So it's the same person. I always forget that not everybody knew him. And so I generally say the proper name, Patel. So we were in the same friend circle, and the three of us essentially were like best friends. It wasn't myself and my husband when we were dating, and Patel was the third wheel, or them two were best friends and I was the third wheel. It was the three of us were like a little triangle of best friends. Endless laughter, quality conversation. I am motivated, I was motivated and inspired daily by Patel, and I continue to be. And the same thing is with my husband. We actually got married in 2021, and our plan was to not tell anyone. We had been planning our engagement party numerous times, but with COVID, it kept getting canceled. And we decided one day to get a Navy chaplain and just say, screw waiting, like let's do this. And the only photo we have, essentially of Patel that night was he was holding the Bible that our rings were on. Because I had told the photographer, who was my husband's other good friend from Mississippi, don't take a picture of anyone. We don't want anyone knowing we got married yet. We're still going to plan the big shebang. But when Patel passed away, I stood up in front of the memorial service, and I think when I introduced myself, I accidentally said I'm, Corporal Pacheco's wife. He was a corporal at the time. And the whole, place was like, wait, did they get married? And so with Paddle there, we decided that was our wedding. We had our best friend there, and to us, there was no need for the pomp and circumstance of a larger wedding. So that is the story of me finding an active duty Marine and getting married to my best friend. So.
How does he compare this duty here in Houston in comparison to the fleet?
So my husband has not been a fleet Marine. He went from the reserve side up to what's called active reserves. And that is when a reservist will take on an active duty contract, but they specifically leave them in reserve battalions. Now, there are active duty components at the 123, and it's very different. So one of my good friends, her husband was an active duty fleet Marine. They came to Houston, and she hated the fact that there wasn't a big support system that you would get at a typical big base. Mm-hmm. She loved the city of Houston. She loved the company she worked for. So that enabled her to move down here and kind of, intermingle into the community. But it's very hard here being an active duty spouse because you don't have all the benefits of a big base. So, even myself, I've lived in Houston on and off for 18 years. My husband and my kids are my world, but our world is on the calendar of the Marine Corps. And so, when it comes to family events or things happening, we don't have the luxury of saying, hey, this is the date we're going to do this, or, this is what we're doing, because at any moment, the Marine Corps could say, hey, we need you here, or, you need to do this. So we as an organization know that, and we seek to build that support system so that when someone comes to Houston, they know the Patel Foundation, brick and mortar, they can come here for resources. And I will say it's been pretty impactful so far. And, we look to grow, and so that when people come into the city, they know, hey, we can go there. And in all honesty, it's not just for active duty Marine Corps. Ellington serves all branches. So there are active duty components, Coast Guard, Air Force, Army. Now all those branches are bigger, and, we are inclusive. So any of those spouses are able to come in and utilize the resources that we have, the same as the Marine Corps spouse.
Now, you are an extremely passionate person when it comes to the military and veteran community. Did you serve as well, or have you just been a big supporter and champion of the veteran and military community for just quite some time here?
So I did not serve. My dad's family is all Navy. My mom's family is all Army. It's a little competition there. Growing up, for me, my mom's best friend, Paula Coda at the time, she goes by Paula Smith. Her sons, Ian and Zach, one of the sons actually joined the Marine Corps, and they were from Corpus. So something that I didn't know when I was little, or, even 10 years ago, was the 123 encompasses Weapons Company in Austin, Bravo Company in Bossier City, Louisiana, Charlie Company in Corpus. There's a Harlingen detachment, HNS and Alpha out of Houston. So Zach was going to UT in Austin and, join the Marine Corps. So he was a 123 Marine. So while I was in, high school, in middle school, knowing what his aspirations were for life, were to go into the Marine Corps. So for me as a kid, the image of a Marine was Zachary Coda. Friendly, inspiring, a Marine's Marine, absolutely would give someone the shirt off his back or the last dollar he had. I remember getting the phone call from my mom in 2004 when he was killed in Iraq. And so for us, our family, that was tough. And so I will say the first military funeral I'd ever been to was Zach's, and you couldn't see the walls. There was no open space. Um, and then, fast forward however many years, and I met Patel, and it's crazy because you have, Zachary Coda, a 123 Marine, and then you had Sergeant Patel, a 123 Marine. I was unaware of the connection until years and years ago when I went to one of their balls with a friend, and all of a sudden on the screen it pops up in memory of Corporal Coda. And I will say this, I was not expecting to see his face, his smile, and I broke down. At that point, I realized that there was, the connection between the different cities and the units and the battalion and the companies. So then when I started dating my husband, I was walking down the hallway with him at work, and I looked up and I saw like this tiny little picture, super faded, incredibly old. And I was like, that's Zach. And he goes, how do you know that Marine? And I told him the story, of us growing up, and him and his brother babysitting us, and, Zach working at my mom's coffee shop, sneaking my sister treats and stuff, when she's supposed to be doing homework. The connection between our families was so incredibly strong that when he died, for my mom, it was like a son dying. For me and my sisters, it was like a big brother dying. So I had told my husband about that, and he was honored to be a 123 Marine because of Zach. And it's not that I put Zach on a pedestal. Like, Zach was a amazing human being. And Zach and Patel are so similar, except, Zach is red hair, ginger, and Patel is, Indian American. And I felt as though all the practical jokes that Patel would play, were very reminiscent of the practical jokes Coda would play. And so when, for us, it was always, hey, our door is open, for anyone. But with Patel passing away, it was holy crap, like, we can't let this situation happen to someone else. A lot of these were friends of mine, and I don't want to see my friends kill themselves. One of my best friends was a Sangan Marine in 2010 and lost 25 of his, members of his unit. And so for me, it's terrifying having, one of my friends call me and say, hey, another one killed himself. It terrifies you because I don't want to get that phone call about my best friend. It's not even that we got that call with Patel. His brother couldn't get a hold of him, and we live by him. And I was like, don't worry, we'll go to his house. He's probably asleep. So going to his home, and, my husband put a ladder up to his patio to get in the back door because we couldn't get the front door open. And finding him was the worst day of our lives. And so for us, it's, how do we prevent other individuals from having the worst day of their lives? How do we eliminate those risk factors? I mean, and there's so much that went into why Patel did what he did. But how can we as a community, how can we stop that from happening again? And for us, it was being proactive in getting to guys while they're still in the service, whether they're active duty or reserves. It's letting them know all of the resources that they have and the community and the network that they have.
Mm-hmm. You jumped into this a little sooner than I thought that we would, and that's fine because I think it's important that we honor and talk about Sergeant Patel. But being that you have brought it up and you were talking about how he was holding the Bible for you, he had his hand on the Bible when you were married and you're newlywed, and he was at that wedding, and not long after that when he killed himself, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Was there,
Yes, sir.
and this is where we can add a lot of value right now to the people that are listening to this show. Was there any warning signs that came from Sergeant Patel that would even give you an inkling that there was something not right about how he was feeling, about the relationships he had, where he was at in his life, or whatever it may be? Did you ever suspect anything like this would ever happen to Sergeant Patel, your best friend?
So I'm going to say that we didn't think it would ever happen. We knew things that were going on, that others may not necessarily know about. But then this sucks because hindsight is 2020. Looking back, I recognize behaviors that didn't fall into his normal pattern. And so, you take someone who is always the smile in the room, someone who is always laughing and always having, a good time and giving that energy to other people, but he wasn't putting that energy into himself. And so, I can see points looking back on normally, hey, let's go out, let's, go grab a drink, let's go, to the hookah bar, let's, go to the ballpark, let's do something, where it was always, yeah, I'll be there in 15 minutes, or, hey, come pick me up, or, hey, let's not do that, let's do this instead, to I don't want to leave my house. I don't want to go anywhere. For me now, that's a massive red flag.
Yes, self isolation, is where it all begins, and you start to disengage from relationships. I lived in a room for 4 years. I literally didn't come out. I came out on the weekends to support my children and their sporting events, and those were the best 2 days of my week. Always was watching my kids, and then after that, I was right back in my room in a chair where I would live a horrifying, anxiety riddled, depressed life. And I've been in those positions, and I've been in those shoes of uh, just feeling that hopeless and helplessness.
Yeah.
And it is a horrifying state to be in. Now, can you describe some of the behaviors that you may have seen starting in addition to the self isolation? And the reason why I want to ask this question is because there could be a spouse today out there. There could be a brother, a sister, an aunt, uncle, neighbor that may be experiencing something that may not be right with their veteran, or with
100%.
their with their own person that they love. And if we can help prevent any of this, that is definitely the goal of today's program. Is there anything that you can, describe, like I said, any of the behaviors in addition to the self isolation, even if it's something so little? You never know what could actually be that turning point to somebody going up to somebody and saying, "Do you need help?"
Mhm.
Or forcing, or at least having a person reach out to a loved one.
So knowing that he was someone who smiled relentlessly, someone who laughed relentlessly, I could literally pinpoint a couple times, more than a couple times of us being somewhere that he was just quiet and almost kind of aloof. The smile wasn't there, the laughter wasn't there. Um, and in the moment, I think we chalked it up to, you know, frustrations with his job. And so, even though he was a reservist, he was on active duty orders, which is it's called ADOS. And so he worked on base as if he were active duty. And something that I learned from him, and this was a red flag to me, was our whole friendship. I will say that I am very blunt. I speak my mind, and if it hurts someone's feelings, it's the truth. Like, I'm sorry.
And you would have been a great Marine, by the way. You are squared away for a Marine wife. I was wanting to tell you this before we got really started into all this really deep stuff, that you are squared away. I mean, I'm talking squared away. So go ahead. I just wanted to give you that.
And so for him, he always said, be kind, because you never know when that kindness is going to tip the scale one way or the other way. Like, every boy has girl problems, everyone has, money issues at some point. And for my best friends, I would ride for them relentlessly. So for me, I was ready to tell someone, hey, like, basically F off. And he pulled me aside and was like, just be kind. You don't know what, they could be going through, and you want to bring light to someone's life. And so I took that with a grain of salt. And there was a point where something happened. And keep in mind, that was a consistent reminder throughout our whole friendship, be kind. You never know what someone's going through. Be kind. You don't know what they're dealing with. He stopped saying that at one point. And for me, I should have been like, well, wait, time out. You're the one that says, you never know what someone's going through. Be kind. And then, it was, I think maybe a month and a half later that he ended up killing himself. And so in the moment, you can never be too sure with a friend. There is, if you're worried about someone, go knock on their door. If they're not answering their phone, or they're not answering a text, and they're someone who is religiously answering their calls and texts, there is nothing wrong with going and knocking on their door and being kind. So,
it sounds like, he was a very, very positive man. And at some point there prior to his death, that positivity just kind of stopped, right? And then he started to just not say those things anymore, those positive reminders to be kind. And, you never know what somebody else is going through, and this and that. And then that just stopped. So perhaps he became, somewhat emotionless, and that's normal for somebody that is going through a very hard time in their life mentally. And through the challenges that life will bring you. Now, he hit it well, and that's the scary part about this. Robin Williams, okay, this is a guy who was on top of the world, one of the funniest men ever to ever act, and his act wasn't like act. It wasn't acting. That's who he was. He was just a funny, happy-go-lucky, outgoing comedian actor who loved life.
Yep.
But he struggled. He struggled. And nobody knew that struggle because he hid it so well. Why do people hide it? Well, we live in an alpha-centric community, especially Marines. Marines don't like to show vulnerability. Marines don't like to show weakness. Marines want to always show how tough they are and how proud they are, and they don't have any issues. And if they have issues, they may share it with somebody, but chances are they won't, because they keep it in. Now, the stigma is real, and we all know that. That's the whole goal here, is to break that stigma. But I still believe that there's so many folks out there that are afraid to come out in that stigma, because it may cost them their career. It may cost them their job. Our country has said it's okay to not be okay. But is it really? And I ask these questions quite often on these podcasts, because I think it's a question that is worth having an answer to. If our government If our states and our counties and our communities and churches always say it's okay to not be okay until you lose your job, and then what? Your
Yeah.
livelihood stripped away from you, and then things get even worse. So I think, again, this is why so many folks don't seek that help. They don't get put on those medications that may help them in their situation because they're afraid of that post traumatic stress tag that they will be labeled on. And again, if you have a job that you can't have any sort of post traumatic stress, guess what? You're looking for a new career. And
Yep.
it's going to add to that veteran. It's going to add to that active duty Marine. It's going to add to that civilian out there that may be a first responder or whatever it may be. It's going to add to their downfall. And will it help them? Absolutely not. It'll just make things worse. And at that time, things will spiral out of control. And the next thing you know, you're in a whirlwind of nightmares trying to find out how you got put on your knees and how the hell you're going to get up. So again, these are things that we need to talk about. These are things that we need to fix if we are ever going to end this suicide, epidemic that we have going on in our country. It's got to stop. There's too many people that are affected by this. It's not just the veteran. It's not just the first responder. It's not just the active duty military guy. It's just not the neighbor. It's everybody that loves that person. It's everybody that is tied to that person. And we all deserve to be heard. I think everybody has a story that's well deserving of being told. And I think everybody needs to have that opportunity and that outlet to speak to somebody freely when they are experiencing something like this, so they can get it fixed and then march on and lead the life that they were intended to live. Now with the experience to help others. And again, I just wanted to touch on that because I think it's very, very, very important that people understand that. Now, you got into this grassroots effort in honor of Sgt Patel. You created the Patel Foundation. Now, can you please explain the mission behind the Patel Foundation?
So our mission, it seems kind of simple. Our mission is to support Marines and those that support them. Period. So, being a Marine Corps organization and, one of the founders, my husband being a Marine, there's a lot of what we do that is very consistent with the Marine Corps. I had someone come into our facility, I think within the first month of us getting it, and we're getting everything set up. And he looked around, he was like, this is kind of bootstrap. I was like, we're making it work with what we have. I had a printer and a computer hooked up to a power box because we didn't have the power turned on yet. We have our board meetings in taverns and local pubs. Try to keep it casual. And so for us, the Patel Foundation, it's not just a name. Patel is our foundation. He is the concrete on broken ground that we can stand on to build everyone up. Can't build a house without a foundation. So, a lot of people don't realize that is the meaning of what our organization was. Patel is that foundation that will help us to build a strong, house, a strong community. So we started with 123 Marines. We have expanded, beyond 123 Marines and have assisted Marines across the state, across the country, and, those that support Marines overseas.
What does it look like to support a Marine in need? What exactly is it that the Patel Foundation will do?
So in emergent situations, let's take the winter storm, for example. Patel lost a lot of his Marine Corps uniforms and everything were ruined. His neighbor had a water line break, and I don't think it was a regular line. Like whatever it was awful. All of his stuff was ruined. His brand new couches were ruined. His computers were ruined. And so we had said, hey, get all the stuff that you need to take out, bring it over to our house. And we'll get you back on your feet. You can stay at our house until the apartment opens. It puts you in a new unit. And unfortunately, after that conversation, he left us within 24 hours. So for us, it's, we get a call of, hey, I have a Marine, in an XYZ situation. What help can you give? So we've done, we don't have endless funds, and sometimes we don't really even have funding. And a lot of it's come, out of mine and my husband's personal pocket. So we covered the travel expenses for a Marine so that he could go from, he got out of the Marine Corps back into the Marine Corps. So his travel expenses to go from, point A to point B across the country. So a zero interest loan on that. And there was a Marine who lost, furniture due to, an infestation. Like it was pretty bad. And, we were able to get couches to him. If someone doesn't have access to a meal, taking them groceries, getting them food. I think that the general public has a really bad misconception of, oh, they're military, they're fine, they're getting paid. Have you seen a military paycheck? Do we know what housing prices are? That's not going to cover it, and then a lot of the guys that are reservists that had the mentality of, well, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to become a reservist, that way I can commission as an officer. The housing market sucks. Post-COVID is awful. And people have lost opportunity to create businesses. So many businesses got shut down because of COVID. And so for us, now we're in a position that when someone says, hey, I want to start my own business, but I want my wife to open it with me. Well, you go to the state of Texas and you do your filing. If you're a veteran, you get a free filing. But if you file with your spouse, it's not 100% veteran owned. So the state makes you pay for filing fee. We are able to cover that filing fee for that Marine. Say the spouse wants to, so this caters to active duty spouses, whether you're on recruiting duty or you're at Ellington. We want to empower individuals, couples, wives, husbands, spouses. So a spouse can come to us and say, I want to become a personal trainer. We can give them a grant to cover their educational cost. Mm-hmm. We have a gym, that's being set up at our facility that they're able to come in and train their clients, and not just train their clients, but as they're going through the certification process, actually put someone through the movement that they're learning. Learn how the body works, learn how, proper movement should look, so that when they take their skills and expertise somewhere else, they can proudly say, this is what I'm worth. This is what I am charging. And without hesitation, they know how to build value in their programming, build value in who they are, as a professional, and grow their business, so that whenever that couple PCSs, that spouse now has a career of their own and the tools and resources to be successful in that career. So, what we do for Marines and their spouses, it's a wide array. We had come to us because their son killed themselves and they couldn't afford to bury him. Within, I think it was about a day, through our networks, we raised the money to cover his burial. And so it's letting people know that we'll do anything we can so that a monetary issue does not become so overwhelming. Or support a family of a Marine so that they don't get overwhelmed. There was a Marine that was killed in Afghanistan last year who everyone rallied behind his mother. Absolutely everyone. This woman has been a voice for the injustice that happened overseas, and people surrounded her. Our mistake as people was we surrounded her, and unknowingly her son did not feel that same cover, and her other son killed himself in August. And so we, as a community, have to keep that in mind. It's not just, the mom or the dad or the spouse. It's, we have to surround the whole entire family. The whole family has to feel supported, because at the end of the day, the brother wasn't in the military, but that death was directly related to his brother who was a Marine and killed in action. And it was it shouldn't even have been an in-action death, if that makes sense.
I'm very familiar with that story. I believe it's based out of Corona, California. Am I correct?
Yep.
So, I'm from San Diego, Temecula. I spent half my life in California, in Southern California, the other half in Colorado. I am new to Texas, been here 2 years now. But yes, like I was saying before, it's anybody that loves that veteran. And adversity is going to hit in life, and we all are going to go through hardships and obstacles and challenging times. Life is so hard. And until you find yourself in the middle of something like this and what you experience, there's really no words to explain how those emotions and how life will take you down this path of just sadness and depression, but yet pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and saying, I've gotta march on. Forward is a motion, and I have got to lead by example to show my kids. My kids are watching me, and that is important. Now, this is still so very fresh in your mind, and it's as if once this tragedy happened in your life with Sgt Patel, were you called? Did you have a higher calling to say, I've got to do something about this? Because you started this foundation very, very quickly after, his tragic death. And you've put so much of your own expenses out there. And like you said, you're surviving on a military paycheck. And yet you've taken it upon yourself and your heart and the kindness and the selflessness that you serve this community with, and said, I'm going to do what I can to help my community and the Marines of 123 and the surrounding Marines of Texas and so on and so forth. But it's time for people to help you. It's time for people to help you. And you deserve some sort of recognition, and you also deserve for people to show up to this event. And I'm gonna try my best to be there. My kids play baseball every Saturday, and I hope the games get over early enough so I can attend this event, guys. This is a honorable family. They're having a grand opening event this Saturday at 6:30 in Houston. The address is right there on the screen. And you'll have an opportunity to go rub some elbows with like-minded people, to hang out with other veterans, and to hang out with active duty Marines, and introduce yourself to the Pacheco family, a great family. And folks, and I know it's a hard time of giving right now. We've got Florida that's getting completely destroyed by a hurricane. We've got so much hardship going on in our country with people losing their jobs due to COVID. We've got, we're falling into a recession. This is a very hard time to open your wallets and give to an organization like this, folks. But if you've got even the $5, 10, 20, 50, it's whatever you have. It will go into good use, and it will help this family help others in need through her channels and through the bridges that she has built in the community, and the lifelines that she has connected people with in this community to help with the betterment of their lives and the lives of their families. And so, folks, I think it's very, very important if you can make it out there this Saturday, just to even wish them congratulations and wish them well on this endeavor. It will certainly mean the world to the Pacheco family. It will mean the world to the legacy and the remembrance of Sergeant Patel. And I also want to get into Corporal Coda. Now, these two men are very involved in your organization, their legacy, and their remembrance. Now, you have a scholarship, a Corporal Coda scholarship. Can you explain this scholarship and who may be eligible for this?
Yeah, most certainly. So the Corporal Coda Scholarship is named after Corporal Zachary Coda, who was a 123 Marine, who was a reservist out of the Austin area. He was attending University of Texas and majoring in international business. Superb student, absolutely amazing. Funny story, he did a exchange student overseas and had to come back to Texas to redo his senior year because apparently Texas does not recognize out of country senior years.
You want to know why? Because we're our own country.
It's a big fact. And so he was just a wildly outgoing individual.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could go on for hours on stories as a little kid looking up, to this man of giant size. So we, starting an organization, we didn't know what we were doing. But I knew that carrying on the legacy of 123 Marines was, what we wanted to do. We wanted to be impactful in our local community to help the guys that we can physically, go to and help. So we decided that we would do a scholarship. Patel had wanted to go back to school, but because he was on 29-day ADOS versus 30-day, his pay was not what it would have been had he been on 30-day. He didn't get BH. And so we wanted to do a scholarship to get reservists into college or to help them in college, because that's what Patel's path was, to go back to school. And we wanted to recognize and carry on the legacy of a 123 Marine who Patel embodied. Patel didn't know Coda. He died, well before his time in the Marine Corps. But they were such similar people that we wanted to honor, Patel's last wishes of going back to school with the honor and memory of someone who had almost finished school prior to Coda going to his last semester of school in University of Texas. His unit was called up to deploy to Iraq. And unfortunately, he did not come home. So our scholarship pays tribute to both of these individuals whose goal and plan in life was higher education. Oh, and who's eligible for the scholarship? The Coda scholarship is open to any reservist out of the 123. So that includes Louisiana, Bravo Company, Charlie Company, HNS, Alpha Weapons Company, and Detachment. And essentially you're nominated by your command. So for us, having you be nominated facilitates those conversations, from the first sergeants, from the gunnies, from the staff sergeants and below. So when they have those conversations with their lance corporals or corporals or PFCs, they start to figure out, what is their path? What are they trying to accomplish in life? And are they someone who embodies the scholarship? Now, I had reached out to an individual who has really good access to reservist, amazing individual. He is the officer candidate selection officer for the Marine Corps, so out of U of H, Captain Friend. And I reached out to him and told him what we were doing, and he said, okay, I think I have a nomination for you. Ended up following up, and he said that, while the individual at that moment didn't meet the requirement, he thought that he had things that he needed to work on. So even though someone may not necessarily qualify, we will give you action items so that we can get you qualified. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And we do have an asterisk, next to the required GPA. So our GPA requirement is 2.67, and someone would be like, well, that's a really odd number. That was Patel.
That's me.
Okay, I like that.
Marine.
And so Patel's GPA when he passed was 2.67. There was a conversation that we had, and he was like, hey, how do I get back into school? What do I do? And so I was like, well, send me your transcripts and we'll figure it out. So there is an asterisk there, because if you are involved in your community, if you, have these recommendations and nominations from, not just your I&I staff and active duty staff, but say there's, a handful of staff NCOs that say this Marine works his ass off. What can we do? How can we facilitate more growth in him? Well, that, and say he has a 2.4. Well, because of his recommendation, that's why it's so important to have that recommendation, so that it's not just a black and white application. We see someone's story, we hear what they're saying, and we will facilitate a scholarship. So we have awarded Marines from Weapons Company and also H&S. We have an Alpha Company Marine, a Bravo Company Marine, and a Charlie Company Marine in the pipeline right now. And say, we have someone who comes in that wants to get their master's, that doesn't necessarily fall under the Corporal Coda scholarship, but it's, Marine education, and we will facilitate help, scholarship wise. So we mold as the Marines mold.
And right now, I've got a question for you that just popped up. It seems as if you're so busy here in Houston, just working with the Marines that are here. Mm-hmm. And it almost seems as if it's been a full-time job of helping all of these reservists from around the area and these different companies and units, within the region here. Mm-hmm. Do you have vision of perhaps growing this, perhaps in the Camp Pendleton area and the Camp Lejeune area in the continental United States? Or is this something that you just want to focus on primarily in the state of Texas, primarily in the 123rd, and then kind of around the area that you're working right now? What's your vision look like?
So we are ambitious. And we have been ambitious since day one. We will always have a home base out of Houston to cater specifically to the 123. That is the grassroots effort that we started on. What Marine stays in one city their entire career? My husband is actually getting ready to PCS soon. And I say my husband because I will be staying here, and we'll go back and forth, visit each other, so that we can continue our mission and have a solid foundation here. We partner with a ton of other organizations and help with resources so that we have networks in all of those places. Depending on if my husband goes to Lejeune next or Camp Pendleton next. We already have in place in both of those areas, not necessarily a brick and mortar, but we have, either board members or strong volunteers that come out with us, so that we can grow what we do there. No Marines in those areas eligible for the Corporal Coda scholarship, but a Marine in that area would be eligible for our Freedom Through Fitness grant. My own trainer, who is a trainer out of the San Diego area, her name is Evelyn, and she is a former Marine. Her and both her husband, we've told them if they have a Marine that comes to them wanting to get certified, that we would cover a grant for them because of everything they do in their community. So our resources are applicable, everywhere. The only thing that is specific to 123 Marines is the Corporal Coda Scholarship. We have a handful of friends, unfortunately, that have not made it, home from their deployments, and we will honor them, when we have the ability to consistently hold the line to the legacy of their name. Like in our ECDC that we're opening up this weekend, we have a computer lab, and so it'll have internet access. It'll have CAC readers. Say a Marine needs to do some sort of online education, they need a little CAC reader. You don't have to go all the way to base. You don't have to get wrapped up into work. You can come here and use it. If you are an ally that needs to use a computer to find a job or take some sort of class, like an SIV, they're able to come and use that. In our computer lab, we are wanting to honor one of my husband's friends who didn't make it home from Afghanistan last year. And so for us, it's, as soon as the computer lab is 100% up and running, we'll have the, official dedication to pay tribute to a sacrifice she made, and us being able to carry on the work that she did, essentially by saving people and giving them the opportunity for freedom, giving them the opportunity for education. So for us, it's definitely important to grow. Our vision will grow as our community grows. So something that you had said earlier, if someone has $5, to me, if someone has an hour of their time, time is the most valuable asset that anybody has. We would not be able to do anything that we've done without the time of our volunteers, without the time of the first sergeants at the different companies having these conversations with their lower enlisted. I wouldn't be able to do what I've done without, the majors out of some of the companies having those conversations, facilitating growth. We, as an organization, would not be possible without the Marines that come and consistently volunteer with us, without the OSO candidates that consistently volunteer with us. So for us, it's, maybe you don't have $5. That's okay. I don't have $5 right now, but I have time. So if someone wants to come in and give their time, that time means the world to a military service member or veteran.
Folks, Christina is sincere. She is genuine. She was very, very well connected with the Houston veteran and military community. Great family. I ask you guys, if you're in the area, please consider going to the grand opening event this Saturday at 6:30 in Houston. This is the flyer right here, and I will post this as well in the description of this podcast. Christina, you have been through a lot. You have been through a lot, and you could have disengaged, and you could have lived a life of a depressed active duty military spouse and sank deep into a couch. But you haven't done that. You have proven to yourself, to your husband, to your family that you are a leader and that you are in this fight to save lives and your heart is in the right place. This has been a great interview, and I sincerely thank you for joining us today. We sincerely appreciate everything you have done and continue to do for our community and for our great nation. Your service, sacrifice, and dedication is truly honorable.
I appreciate you.
Until next time, for Tuesdays with Tally, This is Brian Talley. Good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.